I know you're not supposed to have a favourite grandparent, but when I was little, I didn't know any better. Nanna was my favourite by far. She was the first person I wanted to spend weekends and holidays with, and whenever I was upset, she was there to calm me. If I got into a fight with my parents, I would tell them I was going to live with Nanna. Poppy was omitted. My grandparents lived in an elaborate triple-storey house, complete with thousands of hidden cupboards and nooks. I could have sworn another hidden door was added each time I went to visit. The grounds were an even bigger labyrinth. You could end up on the verge of a cliff or lost in the forest. There was peace in hearing nothing but waterbirds and cracking gum leaves, and the echo of our voices if we sang loud enough. The quiet almost invited us to countervail the past sounds of Risdon Vale's two carronades. At 6 years old, I was convinced Nanna lived in a castle, and each time I went to stay, we would go on a quest to find something new. For each new thing we uncovered, Nanna would tell me a story. Storytelling was in her blood. Her great-great-great-grandmother was Fanny Cochrane-Smith, a prominent Tasmanian Aboriginal and renowned storyteller. Many of Nanna's stories were about Fanny Smith or culture, and each had an important message. One of the most memorable stories she told me was after a long quest through the upstairs wardrobe. We had found 2 guardian angel pins that Nanna had bought during her travels, long before I was born. Each was embellished with one of our birthstones, a peridot and a sapphire. "One for you, one for me," she said, and I chose green. It was Nanna's birthstone, but to me, she was the colour blue. Wherever Nanna went, blue would appear. In the soles of her slippers, in the glass bottles that lined the window sills, in the pebbles and flowers on our adventures, and in the sky. After tacking our pins onto our jumpers, we returned from our quest and baked a batch of chocolate chip biscuits, listening to Susan Boyle's I Dreamed a Dream over and over. It was Nanna's favourite song. We ate our biscuits fresh out of the oven, and Nanna told me a story about Fanny and her mother, Tanga Natura. It went like this. In Palawa spirituality, it is said that family members can communicate with each other through a little twitch in their arm. If a loved one has a message for you, you will feel them calling you. After Fanny married her husband, a Scottish man, she moved far away from the coast. Living on the other side of the state made communication with her mother difficult, but not impossible. One evening, Fanny felt a twitch in her arm and knew that her mother needed her. She told her husband and they set off by horse immediately. When they reached Tanganatura late at night, the first thing that she said to her daughter was, "Did you hear me calling you?" Within the next few days, Tanganatura had passed away, but with this connection, they never parted. A few years later, Nanna and Poppy moved into a smaller house and Nanna's health began to worsen. After she broke her leg, walking became a difficult task and we could no longer go on our quests. Instead, I would sit on Nanna's bedroom floor and she would tell me her stories half asleep. They were still just as entrancing. One day in the school holidays, Mum came home unusually late from work and said that she needed to talk to me. Nanna was in the hospital and wouldn't be coming home this time. We spent the next few days in the hospital with her, talking to her and asking questions for as long as she could stay conscious. But it became harder and harder for her to respond. Nanna's remaining strength was tied to her voice. When she lost the ability to talk, she stopped drifting back into consciousness. She passed away shortly after. A week after Nanna passed, we sat in the front row at the funeral home. I pulled at the sleeves of my blue cardigan, trying to distract my mind from the front of the room. The service began with I Dreamed a Dream, and I couldn't blink my eyes clear any longer. I couldn't hear anyone else crying, although I knew that they were. The only sounds were the music blaring through the speakers over my head and my own shuddering breathing. And I felt stupid. I had to speak in a minute and I needed to stop, but I couldn't. My mum hugged me, my aunt held my hand, and someone behind me put their hand on my shoulder, but no one could calm me down, except for the twitch in my arm.
Hi, my name is Ruby Wiggins, and this is my piece, Watching the Wheel Spin. It's an autumn afternoon. I'm perched on the edge of the playground, in my own world of thought. The bell for lunch has just gone, and everyone is scattering off into their friendship groups to decide how they want to spend their lunchtime. The only thought on my mind is, I wish you were here. I feel so lost. My best friend is away today, fighting off a cold. It's the second time in 3 years that we've been friends that she hasn't been here. Usually I'm the one taking the time off. We've only got each other, and it hasn't occurred to me until now how lonely she must feel. Cutting across my worried thoughts, a voice calls out to me, "Ruby, come play with us." It's Phoebe, a girl that I've known since kindergarten. I feel conflicted. If I go and play with her, I'm betraying Celine, my only friend. It just feels so wrong, but if I don't, this is going to be the longest lunchtime in history. I make my decision and run over to the group of girls. I hope that they'll be playing fairies. I love fairies. What are we playing? I ask timidly over the chatter of the group. Mums and dads, Elizabeth answers. She is by far the most confident in this group. She wears her hair in a high ponytail and always wears a tinted pink lip gloss. I'm not even sure if she's allowed to wear that. The uniform is very strict, after all. How do we play? I ask. The concept doesn't sound very appealing. We all act out being in a family together, Elizabeth says. I'm the mum. Charlotte, you can be the little sister. Phoebe, you can be the dad. And Jada, you're the little sister, she instructs. Who am I ask. Well, you can either be the little brother or the dog. The dog, I think. Who would want to be the dog? They bark randomly and then they jump and they bite. I'll be the brother, I sigh. The next 10 minutes are just utter chaos. People speaking over the top of each other, people changing the time of day that the scene is supposed to take place. There's no logical order or reason or rhythm to this game. How is this supposed to be fun? I'm standing awkwardly at the edge of the group, watching this group of girls. When Celine and I play together, it's never like this. We have fun games, ones that make sense, like watching for fairies, like we're in the Rainbow Magic books. Another one of our favourite things is playing in the wooden cars on the playground and pretending that we're teenagers on a road trip. Celine and I have been friends since we were 4. We always stick to the one game the whole time. Although watching for fairies isn't a game, it's very serious business. Standing awkwardly at the edge of the group makes me realise I'm an outsider in this group. No matter how hard I try to be like them, I won't ever be like them. That's okay. I have a perfectly good group, a tight group of 2, Celine and I. I decide to give up on this group and slip away. Nobody notices. I sit down outside the Year 2 classrooms on the retaining wall and wait for the bell to go. Another 15 minutes. I sigh and watch the rest of my classmates playing happily, with not a care in the world. I want to join them, but I don't know how. What do I say? I don't want to barge in and annoy anyone. The bell finally goes and I stand outside of our classroom to line up, alone. And I don't have a partner. Another stinging reminder of how lonely I feel. Usually I adore school, but not today. Not even writing stories is making me feel better. 3:30 couldn't have come any quicker. I meet my mum out the front of the school and we go to my appointment. I tell my mum about my lonely day without Celine and she hugs me. These are good things to talk to Gloria about today, my mum says gently. I nod. At 18 months of age, I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome or high-functioning autism. My mum knew that I wasn't developing properly because she is an occupational therapist. I had an obsession with the Wiggles and I would sit in front of the TV watching them for hours. I loved playing with cars, but not in the conventional way. I would hold the toy cars upside down and just spin the wheels. I loved stimulation, especially the swings. I would be pushed on the swing for hours at a time and I just adored it. These subtle differences became less subtle as I grew older, but I didn't realise this at the time. I began therapy almost right away to try and give me the best possible chance of a happy and healthy life. I did physiotherapy to help me move and walk better, speech therapy to support my language development and teach me social rules, occupational therapy to help with my fine and gross motor skills. The list grew and changed as I developed. I was one of the lucky few girls that received early intervention. Unfortunately, so many other girls and young women with more subtle and or less obvious symptoms don't receive that crucial early support. When most people think of autism, they think of stereotypical presentations. Young, white, school-aged boys who have no interest in interacting with others, disrupt learning and study train timetables. They might be a prodigy in maths or science, but that is just the tip of the iceberg. There is so much more to autism than society and the media presents to us. What about that quiet girl who sits at the back of the classroom and always has her head in a book? What about that successful 30-something-year-old writer with crippling anxiety who adores fashion? These are the sorts of people who fly under the radar. the ones who have become so good at adapting and changing themselves to meet the expectations of the people around them, the ones who are so good at pretending to be someone else, the ones who have good behaviour and high marks in school, the ones who only realise that they're different when they reach adolescence and these coping mechanisms no longer seem to work. The diagnostic statistics for autism are thought to be 4 to 1. That, just for reference, that is 4 male diagnoses to every 1 female one. Just for reference, 52% of the world's population is female. How can that possibly match up? Why do so many females fly under the radar until they just can't cope anymore? Older children and adolescents struggling with undiagnosed autism usually develop anxiety, depression, and poor self-esteem before they even receive a professional assessment or any help at all. These statistics need to change. Imagine what a detrimental effect this must have on those who never received support or were diagnosed late. These young women who are missed are proven to have more difficulty in leading happy and healthy lives. Why, even in the 21st century, do we still allow our girls and women to suffer in silence? This needs to change. A month or so after that lonely lunchtime, I began to notice changes in the people around me. Celine and I would go out to play as normal, but the teachers began to act differently. Every time they would notice Celine and I playing together, we would be told off and separated. We didn't know why. We missed each other so much, and we would cry when we were put in different friendship groups, always at separate ends of the playground. We used to sneak out at lunch together and hide in different parts of the playground and hope that the yard duty teachers wouldn't spot us, just so that we could play together. Time went on and she was moved into the other class. We stopped talking because we had no classes together and we weren't allowed to mix at breaks. I was inconsolable. I have no one now. For years after that, I was left with the constant burden of the questions. What's wrong with me? What did I do wrong? But little did I know that it was Celine's mother who complained to the school so many times that the school had no choice but to listen. Why did she complain, you may be wondering? Because I was autistic. Let that sink in. Her mother thought that her daughter was catching autism off me, as if autism was wildly contagious and transmissible. Need I say any more? 5 years later, I arrive at school early, as I always do. It's a cold winter's morning and I head to the library, like I always do. I'm allowed to be here in the mornings, so I don't bother trying to find a group of kids that I can sneak in with. I say good morning to Miss Ritchie, the teacher librarian. I head to the back of the library and I notice the spot where the popular girls usually sit, vacant. They always hog the heater, and now it's all mine. I sit on the floor in front of the heater and I take a book that I hid in my blazer and begin to read, feeling on top of the world. I sink into the pages of the book, unaware of the rapidly filling library around me. I don't want to know. I just want to find out who the murderer is. I feel a gentle nudge of my feet and I nearly fall sideways with the shock. Sorry, Elizabeth mutters. I look up and see her entire group of friends sitting in the comfy chairs around me. High ponytails and light makeup, none of them wearing their blazers. Everyone knows that your jumper can't be your outer layer and that you can't wear makeup. My insides are writhing with the anger of their disregard for the rules. Sure, nobody likes the strict uniform policy, but we all have to follow it. What are you reading? Peyton asks. My heart skips a beat. I was just addressed by one of the most popular girls in the school. Act cool, Ruby. Act cool. I'm reading about a murder mystery about 2 students who investigate the death of their principal. I say, my voice wobbling slightly. Cool. How cool would it be if Mrs. Holman was gone? Holly says. Oh no, I didn't mean it like that, I think. What do I do now? Elizabeth nods and abruptly changes the topic. I don't really get what they're saying. Something about a birthday party and ditching school to meet some boys from the boys' campus. I make the decision to sacrifice my position in front of the heater and slip away from the group. I've become very good at this now, being a wallflower. I check the time briefly and make the decision to start walking towards the classroom. The bell will ring in 2 minutes. When a female doesn't receive a diagnosis, she is constantly left wondering, what's wrong with me? Why can't I fit in like everyone else? This constant lingering thought can lead to a wide range of serious mental health issues, such as depression, anxiety, sleeping problems, eating disorders, anger management issues, and in some cases, suicide. Why does this occur? Simply because she is trying so desperately to catch up and keep up with her peers. When a diagnosis is missed, this capable, intelligent, funny, witty girl can't realise her full potential. The evidence is clear. Hundreds and hundreds of studies conclude that autism presents differently in females than in males, and that early intervention and support for all people on the spectrum is key to fulfilling a long and happy life. Why do we still allow our girls and young women to fall through the cracks? We need an autism assessment criteria just for females. Up until I was 14 years old, I would constantly try to separate myself from my diagnosis. I thought that it was freaky and strange to have such a diagnosis as autism. I wouldn't ever tell anyone about my autism, not even my closest friends. I was terrified of being found out and made fun of. I had heard the classroom banter for years. "Oh my God, you're so autistic. Retard." They would tease their friends as a joke. My heart would always skip a beat whenever they said things like this. Is it really that bad to be on the spectrum? I would constantly ask myself. It must be if they're using it as an insult. I'm 13. I'm struggling to cope with the constant sensory challenges of being in a classroom. The lights are too bright, the girls are too loud, and nobody does their work, unless they're yelled at. My noise-cancelling headphones come with me to every class, and I'm constantly on edge. It feels like everyone hates me. I begin walking towards the art block as I have a double in 5 minutes. I sit down in my usual spot in the breakout room where our classes take place and wait for the teacher to arrive. I need to zone out, so I take my book out of my blazer pocket and start immersing myself in the characters' worlds. The teacher walks in and I finish the page I'm on and I slip my novel away. "Good morning, Year 8, my teacher says. "Please open your visual diaries and copy the learning intention from the board." I swiftly take out my book and watch the whiteboard. "We're starting a new unit next week, which is food tech." Everyone cheers except me. Art is supposed to be fun, not a recipe for disaster, I think, starting to panic. I don't know what to say. I need to say something, but I am too rigid with fear to do anything. I write the learning intention down, unsure what to think or say. A staggering 96% of people on the spectrum report having heightened and dulled senses. These can range all across the 5 senses. For example, one person may have an extremely high pain threshold, but also struggle with the tags on the inside of their clothing. Some of these hypo and hypersensitivities may help the person excel in seemingly impossible acts, but others can severely impact their ability to function in seemingly basic and routine tasks. As a young woman in the 21st century, the constant societal drive for perfection in every part of our lives is particularly prominent, especially when trying to achieve the perfect body. Now, as an autistic female, the constant drive to meet the social expectations of a functioning person is so real and raw. Those of us who are fortunate enough to receive early intervention probably knew what it was like to be constantly working with adults to match the social expectations of those around us. From body language to conversation, it was intense, like almost trying to force the genetic predisposition of our perceived social deficits of our brain out. Now combine these two factors and pause for a moment to think. New studies emerging suggest that around 25% of eating disorder patients are autistic or thought to be autistic. Now combine the challenges of being a vulnerable, young, disabled woman in the 21st century. The drive for perfection is so impossible. I have benefited hugely from an accurate diagnosis and adequate support, both in school, in my social life, and in every other setting. I can't even begin to imagine what my life would have been like if I wasn't diagnosed and supported early. I don't want any other female to fall through the cracks and miss out on the opportunity to find themselves. So please, we need an autism diagnostic criteria specifically for females and young adults, which detects the subtle social differences of people with less obvious symptoms. I don't want anyone else to have to go through their journey alone. At the age of 14, I decided I had had enough. Enough of hiding my true self. Enough of pretending to be someone else. I changed schools for a fresh start, and I joined an art therapy group for teens with mental health issues. I was asked to introduce myself to the group. Hi, my name is Ruby. I'm 14 years old and I'm autistic. I look back at the girl from 5 years ago and I barely recognise her, the timid, hunched-over girl trying to run from herself. I knew what autism was previously, but I had never viewed it as anything other than an inconvenient, shameful flaw that I could overcome with painstaking amounts of effort. Now, I am in recovery from anxiety, depression, and an eating disorder. I have awesome friends and a great support network. I have been in therapy my whole life, and only now I realise the purpose of it. It's not there to cure me or make me normal. It's there to help me thrive and reach my full potential in life. I walk into the cafe, bracing myself for the chatter. With my headphones and book tucked safely away in my bag, I walk over to my friends and take my usual seat at the table. Hey, Maeve says. How are you? I haven't seen you all morning. I had an appointment this morning, I reply. How is everyone? I ask, trying to get a foot in the conversation. Ridiculously tired, Maeve says. It's so annoying, Alia replies. No matter how much sleep I get, I'm always tired, Dagny says. Well, the perks of being a teenager, I reply. Asher asks me about my pets, and then the conversation begins. We talk and laugh for what feels like 5 minutes, but what has actually been our entire lunch break. Hi, my name is Ruby. I'm 16 years old and proudly autistic.
Hello, my name is Sienna Boorer, and today I'm going to be reading my non-fiction piece, Grief's Strange Walk. So let's go. My eyes opened slowly. Grass was under my hands. I was confused. All I could see was black nothingness and one strip of bright light. I looked towards the light and called out, Mum, Mum. My voice was so quiet. This scared me because I was yelling, but all I could make was a whisper. I tried to move forward, but I couldn't, so I turned, trying to see if I could notice anything. Next to me, I saw a large, silver, shiny metal object. I didn't know what it was. I looked down, and under that metal thing was a hand. It had blood running down its knuckles. It didn't scare me, I just looked at it. I started to cry then. I wanted my mum. The bright light suddenly became dark, and hands were reaching in and grabbing me. It's okay, I've got you, okay? It was my mum. I held her so tightly as light flooded my vision. It was so bright I couldn't see anything. My leg hurt and nothing was normal. She carried me over to a woman, a stranger, who was sitting near the curb and gave me to her. All I could see was that she was old, and all I knew was I didn't want to be with her. I just wanted my mum, but my mum was gone. I could hear her screaming. She was yelling for help, and I was calling, "Come back, Mum! Mum, come back!" The woman was trying to soothe me, but I didn't want her. I didn't even know who she was. Soon, more people arrived with blankets, and they were trying to cover me. This made me angry, and I tried to fight, but my leg hurt too much, and I was just too tired. So I gave up. I just lay there on the hard, hot ground, surrounded by voices. Out of a corner of a gap in the blanket, I could see a man wearing a fluoro orange work jacket. His head was leaning backwards and his mouth was open, and 3 people were holding him up. His hands were folded pathetically on the asphalt. I looked away. Nothing made sense to me. Although I can write this now, it is only a poetic approximation of what I can recall. Trying to collect the memories of a 5-year-old and convert them into the rational thoughts and emotions of a 16-year-old cannot be perfectly achieved. When I was 5 years old, I lost my 7-year-old brother in a horrific traffic collision. At that age, I didn't really understand that this meant my family would change. My mother became distant. She started running and focusing more on her horses. She also became more worried about me. I felt lonely. It was hard to entertain myself since I had a companion for the first 5 years of my life. Many people describe grief as being blue, but it's not blue, it's grey. It forms and thickens around people like an impenetrable fog. I know this fog. My family knows this fog. It is around every corner. Even though there are so many people caught in this fog, nobody seems to be able to speak to these ones. When we are presented with an opportunity, most of us turn into carnival clowns, mouths open, heads turning round and round, wanting to help, wanting to speak, but our fear of sadness has turned us into stone. My brother Kine had the most vivid imaginations. We would spend hours playing at a tree at our home. We called it Piglet's Tree. Although he could be so serious, the stories he created were wild and unique. His favourite character was called Cowboy Velociraptor, and he would say to me that he would play all the main characters and I had to play the sidekicks. This always made me grumpy. One of my last memories of him was when he had stopped at a petrol station to go to the bathroom, the day of the crash. We had been playing the foot game, sticking our feet out of the cubicle and the other person stomping it. My brother was playing with my mum when he suddenly paused and said, "I love you, Mum." These were the last words he said to her before he died, as shortly after pulling out of the petrol station, our vehicle was hit by a truck, crushing the life out of my brother, critically injuring my aunt, and leaving myself and my mum as broken survivors, unequivocally changed forever. One of my teachers once told me that grief is not a uniform, one-size-fits-all process. These words could not be more true. I have seen many people deal with their losses in incredible ways. A girl in my class once told me of her experience when she lost her father. She told me of how numb she felt and how it was hard for her not to just remember him when he was sick, rather than focusing on what he used to be like before the sickness. She also opened up to me about some of her memories of what others told her during the time after the passing of her father. She acknowledged that when others reminded her of his love for her, it really brought her comfort. I was and still am in awe of her openness and strength. What she experienced seemed so wildly different from what I myself experienced. I believe that I didn't really properly grieve for my brother until about the age of 10 and on. That's not to say I didn't grieve at all when I was younger, but it was in a different way, with less emotional understanding involved. Thinking of her experience and of my own, I decided to explore more into the reasons behind the different ways people react to grief. Through research, I found commonly the same advice and ideas appear behind most popular and rudimentary websites, organisations, and psychologists. These typically included the examination of the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, and how grief can affect you both mentally and physically. They pointed out that no one person experiences their grief in the same way, which, as I noted before, is completely true. Although I agreed with all the information I read, I found one thing that saved my family, and I'm sure others, was not included. That one thing is forgiveness. I know for a fact that if my family didn't forgive themselves, we would still be broken. Each of us blamed ourselves in different ways, even though no one of us was to blame. I know I'll never understand what my mother went through. She lost her son, I lost my brother. She told me how one day she went out to the ocean and screamed out, "I'm sorry," over and over again. Forgiveness helped us heal and was part of our grieving process. I know I can't reverse the time and stop us leaving the house that day. So all I can do is hold on to the memories I have and share them. It brings me joy now to see my little half-brother giggling away as we play the characters I have shared with him that were once much loved by my brother. And would you believe he directs me to play the sidekicks? Some things never change.
I have not been able to develop an idea of what home is to me. Home isn't family. I have no real family I wish to associate with. I live alone, and I haven't kept any of the 17 foster ones. Home isn't location. I've moved everywhere from Geefston to New Norfolk, so even the Tasmanian landscape isn't familiar to me. Home isn't what I make it, because I haven't been able to make it. Everywhere I've lived has made me unhappy and stressed. I used to have a saying that I don't have a home, I have a house, which is ironic as most of the time I didn't even have that. When I first began to live semi-independently, the people in charge would often remind me that it wasn't my house, it was theirs. The concept of home is unfamiliar to me, so I often scoff if someone says a place reminds them of home or that the environment is where they belong. I'm not trying to be derisive when I do so, I just haven't been able to experience it, so the idea is foreign to me. I cannot relate to that yearning of home that movies depict, that people strive to create, that soldiers fight to protect. For me, the idea of home is like a damaged painting, a beautiful concept, but broken. I have severe trust issues. Despite now living alone, I tiptoe around the house because it's dangerous to be heard. I hate to sit in silence, and I constantly look over my shoulder. How can I feel truly at home if I constantly fear that someone will take it? Someone might come inside to hurt me, remove my space, send me somewhere else, or control me. I treasure my control over my space because I've never had the chance to before. I've been asked before if the people in my life could be where home is, and so far, my answer is no. Not only are the most important people in my life separated around the state, but I also don't let myself grow too close to people. I have called one too many women mum only to have them reject me. I've had too many toxic friends, too many families, too many guardians to feel like anyone is family. I've been hurt too many times by the people who promise to love me and keep me safe. My biological family is composed of murderers, drug abusers, anti-vaxxers and arsonists. I do not associate them with them where I can help it. I know there are people out there who care for me, but my logical side can't rationalize this to the scared, bruised girl who continues to exist in my subconscious, the girl who waits for them to leave her as everyone else has. For me, my life goal is more about stability than home. I have already experienced more hardships than most people should have to, and I'm only 17. I've lacked control in my life for far too long, and so now my goal is simple: stability. I've been a youth consultant for many years, championing for youth rights both in the care system and out. I've talked about my life experience and the changes I want to make, and whilst those changes would have helped me if they'd existed earlier in my life, I now don't wish or expect for anyone or anything to help me. I don't want lots of money, although the reassurance that it would bring would be nice. I don't want kids, both because I feel that with my upbringing I wouldn't know how to raise one, but also because the idea disgusts me. I share my body with no one. It is mine, and I have sole control. I don't want a super thrilling job, or fancy items, or fame. I want simplicity, stability, a life where I want for nothing that I cannot achieve myself. That's not to say I don't have a purpose in mind. I want to prove myself. I want to show my sister a better role model than my other siblings. I want to show my mother that I know what I'm doing. I want to show my father that the daughter he nearly destroyed was stronger than he was. What I want is a simple house, 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom with a bath, and 1 kitchen that connects to the lounge, a small deck and a shed to store things, a big fluffy rug, hardwood flooring and a comfy couch. Nothing huge. I want an open plan space with big windows that don't trap me inside. I want a small personal library of the books I have collected. I want a fluffy dog, a big cat, and a few rats. Creatures which have never hurt me. Creatures who know how much love I can provide. I want a simple marriage to the love of my life and a job as an art conservator where I spend my time repairing paintings. Paintings which have been damaged from neglect, abuse, and lack of care will be carefully fixed by my expert hand and displayed for the world to see. I want a life where I don't need to stress because I've spent enough time stressing. The question of what is home holds little meaning to me. Home is non-existent, a beautiful little lie upon which perfect people reassure the broken that peer through the windows. Home is fear, an inconsistent concept which slips through my grasp every time I begin to hope. Some people like to place their idea of home in the concept of God, an almighty being which provides the stability and love that home represents. I wish it were that simple for me. If I could give up my control and worry and believe that a God was out there protecting me, it would make it so much easier. But if there is a God, I believe he has forsaken me. Why else would he not help me as I begged him at the age of 5 to save me from the wandering hands of the devil in human flesh? Why, when I cried for him at 9 to provide me the warmth I craved when locked outside on yet another cold night? Why, when I screamed for my sister to be protected from her father who existed only to share hell with the both of us? I cannot bring myself to accept a God if he allows the suffering of innocence to continue. If he couldn't save me then, I cannot believe that he would save me now. I've been asked if I ever believe I'll find home. As pessimistic as I am, the same little girl buried deep within my mind clings to the hope that I will. I choose to believe that with time and effort, I will one day find that stability, the place that is mine and that I long to return to, the place in which I feel safe. It is difficult to allow myself to believe, but I'm nothing if not resilient, and I owe it to the girl that I was. And when I do, I believe I'll understand those people in the movies who long to return to that small town in which they grew up. I will understand those hopeless romantics who follow the call of the wilderness, the pull of a heart. That painting will be mended, and I will understand the blood that countless warriors have shed in order to protect the one place they truly belong. Home.
Nine of Swords. Fear, anxiety, isolation. I am the one person in my grade 3 class that does not do religious education. I colour in Snow White printouts while the ancient church volunteer preaches Christianity to the rest of my class from my corner surrounded by colouring pencils. I am quietly judgmental. God associates himself in my head with idiocy and violence. He is an icon of the oppressive patriarchy, an idea that is not quite my own but that I eagerly pick up. And I leave faith well alone. Or I attempt to. The first time I pray, it is because I do not have any other option. I am alone in my room and terror is white hot in my veins, and I get down on my knees, close my eyes and clasp my hands, and I, the stringent atheist, implore God for asylum. God, who has white hair and hard eyes and a male jaw, and always is situated above me. I imagine he looked down on me with disdain. How pitiable I was in my desperation. My prayer is answered, and even in my shaking gratefulness, I assure myself it was just a coincidence. I have a friend in grade 9 who gives out a book on evolution. It refutes God with science and mocks theism, and my friends parrot it. I join in conversations where we all laugh at how blindly stupid faith is, because I have never liked being left out. My mother's spirituality is a notion I have been peripherally aware of for years. The faith that has carried her through everything that has been terrible in her life is quite foreign to me, and while I politely disbelieve in her notion of the universe, I become lonely. The Hanged Man. Release, potential change, trust. I am crying over a tarot card that is too perfect to be chance. I do not have my own deck yet. This reading is digital with helpful card meanings for those like myself who have minimal training in interpreting them. The 6 of Pentacles reversed has a grey rat and 6 golden coins, and underneath the words I have been needing to hear for months. If you continue giving freely, there may be nothing left of you. Be kind, but be sensible too. I remind myself that it is just chance and cling to the cynicism that I have known for years, but I cannot deny that I feel more seen than I have in months. The grey rat and his message become my phone's wallpaper, and I heal a little bit more every day, every time I see the words. I buy my own set of tarot cards and learn their meanings and find a hitherto undiscovered comfort in their messages. I am still skeptical. I am still aware that they are just pieces of paper and that they mean nothing, but if they mean nothing, how can I explain this feeling? I cry again at the 10 of Wands reversed, the tiny, pale girl that buckles under a load too heavy for her to hold alone, but that she refuses to put down. And I think about everything I am carrying. I think about my own bowing shoulders. Religion has never been a word that I liked, but spirituality is becoming more and more appealing. My research brings me Wicca, which doesn't fit, and neo-paganism, which does, the image of the sun as the symbol of the sacred masculine, and the moon as the symbol of the sacred feminine. The moon, which I have always been infatuated with, and suddenly my mind manifests a goddess. The Queen of Cups, nurturing, creativity, spirituality. I am sitting on my bed with my hands wrapped around a burning candle. It is full moon and I am praying for some romance to come my way. My prayers are personal. Poetry is my form of tribute. Every word I write is a gift to myself and, by extension, to her. My goddess has bright eyes and a soft jaw. She is the perfect feminine image, maiden, mother, and matron. She is the moon. It is an idea that I find difficult to communicate in fear of being mocked, maybe, as I would have mocked someone who told me that they worshipped the moon, but I still track the phases on my phone. Every full and new moon I pray to her, find solace in her fullness or empathy when she is empty. I even practice little magics, rituals that I have stolen off the internet, full of herbs and rhymes and disclaimers at the bottom of the page that there is no guarantee that they will work. I don't mind. Just the act of speaking the words or using the salt is enough for me to placebo a change. I think maybe that is the magic. I read tarot when I am scared or lost or desperate, and every so often I fancy that she is there with me, long fingers and a bright smile, turning over my cards and placing a hand on my heart and saying, "It's okay, Bella. I've got you." I will close my eyes and let her hold me.